So if you would, go ahead and please tell me about the company. I know a little bit about the process that's involved, but I would love to hear it from your perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm LC Crowley. I'm the CEO of Trioscope. Trioscope is a entertainment technology company. We have sort of a couple of components to the company. The primary one being that our entertainment studio is producing TV shows and films built on our proprietary, now patented technology platform called the Enhanced Hybrid Animation Platform. Our first series is a series on Netflix called The Liberator, which came out last year. And what we're doing is really, our mission is a big, ambitious one, and that is about kind of revolutionizing the way stories get told and which stories get to be told. We are hybridizing live action, CG, and 2D in sort of a moving graphic novel look where all of the emotional component, the emotive qualities of live action are maintained because they're real actors performing their craft, but we're dropping that and enveloping that in a CG world and then skinning it in a 2D sort of look in order to kind of get the best of all of those worlds, right? So the other component is that when you do that, you're able to tell really big stories at a fraction of the cost of what they would be if they were photoreal, VFX, or live action, or both. So, and that's not even just a business angle. That really, for us, is a key component because it unlocks a bunch of stories that would otherwise never get told. So, name your favorite filmmaker, and they've got things they can't get made. So our idea is that if that's the case for the most elite in the world, everybody else has got as many of those or more. So what we want to do is liberate all these amazing untold stories with a medium that allows no compromise, just a difference in approach.
So how does it work in terms of, I'm guessing you do the live action capture first and then convert it over with the animation, or do you have to do them separately and then merge them in?
So it sort of happens simultaneously, actually. So we're working on the CG ahead of time. We put the actors into the capture environment, which we call the Triosphere. We're able to, wherever we are in the CG process at that point, let's say we're 70% done, we're able to drop that footage and using all the sort of normal virtual production methods so that we can see what that footage looks like inside of the CG world that's been created. And then once those two things are complete, we then take it sort of back into post where we do all of our compositing and all our tools actually do all the work to sort of make everything blend together.
Okay, so I'm curious about this project. When I first got the email about it, I thought, George R.R. Martin and Vincent D'Onofrio, that's an interesting,
Yeah, what do you think about that? What was your first impression?
My first thought was, if I'm being perfectly honest, I'm going, doesn't George have a book he needs to get finished? Because people are, this crowd here is going to be wanting that. And then, Vincent, very interesting because he's got a huge body of work. Yes, people know him recently as the Kingpin, but, you go all the way back. I mean, I go back to Full Metal Jacket and even before that.
Exactly.
And then when I thought, wow, this is an interesting combination of the two. And then I saw the title, and I go back to those pulp films like Night of the Zombies, Night of the Living Dead. That's what I meant to say. And you're like, okay, this is really intriguing. And then when I saw that it was going to be done with the technology that they used on the Liberator, I said, this is really interesting. So I guess my first question would be, how did this all come together, and who approached whom about this?
Good question. No, and as far as that other book, I have zero dog in that hunt. That's way above my pay grade. This story came to us by way of Martin Sinsmeyer, who's an actor and also producer, but he was in The Liberator. He starred as Samuel Coldfoot in The Liberator. He had worked with Vincent on The Magnificent Seven. He and Vincent were hanging out. Vincent mentioned this project, and Martin said, "Hey, you should check out Trioscope. Maybe that's the way to do it." What I would later learn is that this project had been kind of in development for a while. George and Vincent had been talking about making it, and there were all manner of discussions going on about how it would be executed. But ultimately, Vincent thought there was something to the potential of making it using Trioscope. He called me. And he's like, "Hey, you want to get involved with this thing?" I was like, "Yeah." It's a Western. I mean, we've been wanting at Trioscope for a while to sort of bring in a Western to the studio. Obviously, with George at the helm and Vincent at the helm, it was an easy yes for us.
How would you describe the film? That's what I've been trying to. I haven't heard a lot about it.
Yeah.
But obviously the title brings up certain imagery, but how would you describe the film?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it's a very off-kilter Western that takes a very non-traditional left turn. And it smashes genres in the way that, I don't know if you're familiar with Howard Walder, but all of his stories, this is based on one of Howard's short stories.
I'm not, but I will definitely have to look into that.
Yeah, check him out. So, like Clark's World magazine and all those kinds of places where this kind of story material is where Howard, and Howard and George go way back. I think they were like grade school buddies.
Oh, okay.
But finding a way to sort of blend Western and kind of like 50, 60 schlock is something that, it today feels very, sort of very fresh. Even though we've seen sci-fi takes on Western, we've never seen one quite like this, I think.
Yeah, the last time they tried one, it didn't go over as well as they had hoped.
Not so well. Yeah, I won't give too much away, but yeah, there's definitely a different take going on here.
Now, do you know at this point if we're going theatrical, or is it streaming, or is that still all up in the air at this point?
Completely up in the air.
Okay.
We're excited to kind of figure out what happens next. I mean, to his 100% credit, George just wanted to make the movie and then decide where it was going to go. So that's what we're doing.
And that's actually a good way of looking at it.
Yeah.
I think, especially now. I mean, it's straight. Back in the day, there was the stigma of, oh, it's straight to DVD, or it's straight. You don't have that with straight to streaming anymore, because there's some really good stuff, and if it goes into the theaters, all the better.
Exactly.
So, looking down the road, the technology, how would you say it's enhanced or grown since you did The Liberator? Is there like anything new that you would say that
Yeah.
like resolution's gotten higher, frame rates, or?
All of the above.
Okay.
So all of our tools, which are all doing kind of, bits and pieces along the way throughout the process, have gotten more refined. I think we've really figured out what we want to be when we grow up in terms of, the way we want to tell stories. Ultimately, what we see ourselves doing is enabling filmmakers to tell the story they want to tell. So the tools need to be able to adapt to that. So it's not as though Trioscope is a look or a style. It really is just a storytelling platform, right? That is predicated on those three components that I mentioned, which is blending live action with CG and skinning it with 2D. What look comes out of that is truly up to the vision and the imagination of the creators. So a lot of what we've been doing is refining our tool's ability to give as many, as much variation and latitude as we possibly can. Resolution's gone up. Some of the interesting things that we're doing with frame rate have gotten stronger, more refined. Everything, the end result of Trioscope feels like animation, and we're huge lovers of animation, and we want it to have that animated signature, but we don't want that to come at the expense of all of that great human emotion that comes from an actor, performing the craft. So finding where that line is, so to speak, has been a key component. Our chief creative officer and co-creator of Trioscope with myself, Greg Junkaitis, he's the mastermind. He's, before we formed Trioscope, he was at ILM, and so he was working on everything, from Revenant to Star Wars and everything in between. Before that, he was working on Pan's Labyrinth and Sin City and all of that. So he's kind of been on the path toward this sort of hybrid model for a long time. And the big thing for us is giving audiences this sort of visual signature that says, hey, or a lens through which to see a story, that they haven't seen before, but that has a little bit of a lot of the pieces that they know and love, right?
So I'm curious, have you had people in the video game industry that is heavy on motion capture for some of the upper end titles jumped on and considered this? Because when I was watching the last series, you know, I'm in my head going, boy, some of those early Call of Duty games would have some pretty awesome cutscenes with this technology.
Cutscenes and maybe the games themselves.
That too.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of other stuff coming down the pike for us where, you know, like I said, our vision is to be unlocking stories. And sometimes, right now, we're focused on Hollywood and unlocking stories from great filmmakers. A lot of we've just raised some venture capital, and about half of our investor set, a little over half of our investor set, come from the gaming space. And so unlocking gaming storytelling with what we're doing is a really interesting playground for us. And eventually, you know, we're aiming toward launching our own platform.
So I'm curious, when you first started moving forward with this, did you have hesitation from studios in that I've kind of heard that they kind of like we know how things are going right now, they're hesitant to take on things new, but if you give them we can do this for like half what you're spending now, all of a sudden you've got their interest. Is that kind of how it worked?
That part doesn't hurt, right? We don't like to start there. We like to start on the basis of make this decision creatively, or make this decision on like for instance with Liberator, the money wasn't the first part of the conversation. It was really about telling a story in a different kind of way. And they were really excited to be able to promote that aspect of this story. The script was already there. It was already amazing. It was originally, you know, planned as a live action piece. But I think Liberator saw there being sort of something bigger at hand that they could do by telling it this way. It just so happened that also came with a much lower price tag.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that is usually what makes or breaks the deal is how much is this going to cost us? And,
exactly. It's very true.
And that's interesting because, you know, and I think with the success of that, I'm sure it opened up so many more doors. Now all of a sudden people who may not have been thinking going that route are saying, here's a proven case, let's see what they've got.
Exactly. Yeah, we've been very fortunate that the phone has definitely rang. And that's what we see our job is really evangelizing that type of storytelling to people who weren't thinking about it, who may have a project that's locked up financially or just they can't figure out how to solve it creatively. So, you know, we're just one by one, you know, kind of step by step, exposing as many filmmakers, whether it's producers or production companies, writers, directors, as we possibly can.
So at this point, where is Night of the Cooters in production? How far along? When might we see it? Where do we have a ballpark yet? Or
we're in post-production now.
Okay.
I would say that it's safe to say that at some point next year,
everyone
will get to see it. It all depends on the distribution method.
A Comic-Con debut? Sorry.
No, I actually love that idea. I'll have to pitch that to George and team and see what they think.
That'd be great. All right. I think that